So they were in the process of inventorying these things, and this gentleman was handcuffed and taken away. And while they were there working, the phone rang, so I answered it. And
it was a drug dealer.
Yeah, the man on the other end of the line said, is Jimmy there? And I said, no, he's not here right now. Can I help you? He said, well, you're supposed to have a package for me. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. Come on over. So
I'm going to pick it up. We have it for you.
So they hit all the police cars, and this guy shows up, and one of the undercover officers sold him a bunch of drugs and then arrested him. So
well, that must have been like one of those interesting cases where they just show up and they arrested him. Wow.
Yeah, it falls into your lap sometimes.
Now, have you had any Perry Mason style court cases where what's a court case like? Take us through when you're in court and you're doing what a lawyer, well, the prosecutor at this case, we're still talking about you as the prosecutor.
In the prosecutor side is where I had a lot of trials. Over the course of my career, I probably had over 100 jury trials, but
wow.
The majority of them were when I was a prosecutor, because you just have one after another. But a Perry Mason moment that comes to mind is I was prosecuting a case for dealing in stolen property. And it's a second-degree felony in Florida, which means the maximum is 15 years. It's a very serious crime to sell property that you know is stolen. And so I was prosecuting this gentleman for stealing a lot of stolen stereo equipment and other computer equipment from the victim's home. And naturally, his claim was he had no idea it was stolen. Even though he bought it for pennies on the dollar out of the trunk of a car.
That was clue number one, right? Yes.
But I went to, on the third day of the trial, I went up after lunch, and there was this young kid, standing in the hallway, and he asked me, is this the State versus Jones courtroom? And I said, yes, it is. And he said, oh, I'm here to testify in this case. And I said, oh, is that right? And he said, yeah, I'm the guy that sold Mr. Jones the stolen equipment. I just got out of prison for the burglary. And I said, oh, well, I'm glad, good for you. Glad you're out.
Yeah, that's going to definitely help his case, right?
I hope you turned your life around. And I said, let me ask you something. Did Mr. Jones have any idea this stuff was stolen? He said, of course he did. He knew it was hot as could be. And just going on and on. And I said, okay. So we go into court a little while later, and he's called as a defense witness, and he gets up and says, oh, Mr. Jones had no idea this property was stolen. I sold it to him. I sell a lot of equipment, so he had no idea. And so then they say, cross-examination. So I go to the podium, and I could see him looking at me like, oh man. And I said, do you remember me? And he said, yes. And I said, have you been telling the truth in here? And he said, oh.
So, understand.
Yeah, that was my most dramatic as far as being a Perry Mason moment, getting somebody to break down on the witness stand.
And actually admit it in open court.
Yes, that it was stolen, that the defendant knew it was stolen, and it was, of course, a lot of objecting and yelling and screaming, but it was... naturally, we did get a conviction. So.
Let's take you from being the prosecutor, and how did you transition to private practice?
There were two things going on in my life at the time. And one of them was that when I was prosecuting one of my last murder cases, I noticed that I wasn't getting that real adrenaline rush from it. And also my kids got tired of hearing the stories about crime. And then the final deciding point was that the state attorney that I worked for was not reelected.
Oh, okay.
And I had become, I don't know, somewhere up in the management level of the state attorney's office, which there's sort of an unwritten rule that you go out, you leave with the state attorney, the losing state attorney. So I thought about staying in prosecution, but I would have to commute to either Tampa or back to Clearwater and possibly Pasco. But I decided to open my own office and hung out a shingle and waited for the phone to ring.
Now, was your first office here in Brooksville?
Yes,
Is
it
it
was.
in the same very building? Or?
No, it was over on Main Street, just around the corner from where we are today.